So, good evening from the UK. And what time is it with you, James?
It is pushing 12 o'clock noon.
12 o'clock noon. Well, today I'm really looking forward to having a great conversation with James Bennett. James and I met through actually doing some work with his dog, Angel. And James, just run us through a bit about where you're at with everything that's going on and what you've been doing with your new website.
Well, the website is largely for my own therapy. I don't know where it comes from, but I have this problem. I can't deal with stuff that's not fair. It's like chalk on a board to my soul. And as I started to wake up 15, 18 years ago, I would stew on all the world's problems and internalize it, and it would keep me up at night and bother me. And we had a local newspaper called the Press Democrat. I believe the press part, not so much the Democrat part, but it was like a UN Agenda 21 indoctrination manual that they called a newspaper. And I would chew on my fingernails since I was a child. I'd internalize and worry about everything. And the day that I started to blog and get this stuff off of my chest, I stopped chewing on my fingernails, and it was a therapy for me, and it was a release. And been quite an activist in Northern California, where we moved from. And my little road to awakening is very much in Rosa Corey's book, Behind the Green Mask. She actually tells the story of how we woke up with their property rights manipulations that they were engaging in. And, certain parts of the world are very much templates and hotbeds for globalist manipulations. And the Northwest in the United States is, very much. It's a template for what the globalists wanted to do everywhere. So, so although I have, I love that term you use, technophobe. Although I have very humble tech skills, I put together a website, and it's not everything I'd like it to be. It's called eyesonlies.net. So my motivation for, since I live rurally in the country now, my brand of activism has to be through being online. And put together a website. I'm hoping to get out there and for my own therapy, get some stuff off my chest in hopes that there might be a half a dozen people that identify with what I have to say.
And that's so important, isn't it, James? Because, with what we've all been going through, we talk about us going through from the last year, but actually it's been a lot longer, hasn't it? We just haven't been so aware of the frustrations that we've all been living under. But finding your own way, whether it's like you started out with blogging, whether it's talking about it, whether it's getting it down on paper for yourself, it's really, really important for people to find that release. Because I think at the moment there's a lot of people where never has the division been so wide within families, within friendship groups, because up until the last year, if people wanted to, they could really talk about quite trivial matters, and those real core belief divides weren't so in your face. But I think one thing that 2020 and 2021 so far has taught us is that it's becoming very obvious what side of the line people see the world today through. And because that's so, people are so passionate about it, and it really is down to the core beliefs about how they move forward living their lives, they can't hide that anymore.
No, and we very much need to pick sides at this time, because as is becoming increasingly apparent, we are in a spiritual battle between good and evil. And I think that's becoming, to anybody that's a little bit awake, I think that should be becoming more and more apparent every day. I mean, the political theater resembles kind of halfway between reality and perhaps a Saturday Night Live comedy skit. It's just so blatant, isn't it?
The trouble
Yes.
is, in the UK, we don't see a lot of it because we don't get, there's not a lot reported about what's happening on your political scene. And I often get asked, why am I so interested in what's happening in America? But
Mm,
because what's happening in America is a very obvious reflection of what's happening across the globe. And I think,
yes.
it's very, very obvious with the sort of Biden-Trump debacle and what's going on there. I mean, you and I were talking off camera about really trusting what we're seeing. So if you take what's happening with Biden now, I can't bring myself to call him President Biden because I don't believe he is. But if you take that, how many people, if they really sat there and were honest with themselves, would believe what they're seeing is actually real?
Yes. Well, I would say two things about that. First of all, what happens in America, I would say that it is impossible to overestimate the significance
Mm.
and of this transformative chapter that we're in right now. And America, although not perhaps as deserving as it was 30 or 40 years ago, it is a little bit of a beacon for freedom. As long as the door is ajar to freedom in America, it is ajar to humanity's freedom, because although it has been corrupted and molested, the original American experiment defined in our Constitution anchors us in the cornerstones of liberty. And that's why it is so vital and so central to the globalist cabal's agenda to extinguish the American experiment. Because once they defeat freedom in America, there really isn't, I don't believe, hope for freedom everywhere. Luckily, despite superficial appearances, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, I think you're so right. I mean, it's been very interesting to see. I mean, a couple of the things that have really hit home to me. I've never been interested in politics before, because I've never trusted a word a politician has said. But what's really been obvious over the last year is there are, certainly in a lot of the developed world, there is no independence at all. I mean, we can see by the way the whole scandemic's been handled that unfortunately there is a master plan and there is someone or a group of people pulling the strings, certainly for the UK, certainly for Canada, Australia, the States, obviously, most of Europe. I mean, when we look at the EU, we thought in the UK, when we left the EU, then that would give us some level of independence, but we're rapidly seeing how little that is the case in terms of things that matter. And it's quite frightening, where I think up until recently, a lot of people have really believed that their country, their nation, is an independent entity and that they're voting for the people in control and the people they vote for get in. And I think now it's pretty obvious to anyone who's even got a glimmer of awakeness that that's just simply not the case, and how much that whole agenda has been controlled for years.
Well, there is no running away from the situation that we are in. This chapter represents the culmination of planning on both sides for a very long time. So if we think we're going to move away to a little island, we might buy ourselves another year of time. But there's no running away. And and I think we touched on this before. I wasn't as social, I don't know about you, over Christmas as I usually am, because what blows my mind even more than folks I know actually thinking that persona, we'll call him, that they refer to as President Biden, actually a man that couldn't fill a high school gymnasium, actually is president. What blows my mind even more than that is the complacency in which folks accept it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, well, better luck next time. And I just want to shake them by the ears and say, you don't understand. There ain't going to be a next time. You know, if you thought voting was a charade before, there's not going to be a next time. This is it right here and right now. And you reach out and you try to wake them up, not coming from an egoic place, hopefully. And you give it a couple of, 3 strikes like baseball. And if it doesn't work, we have to move on, because if you're not being effectual and it doesn't feel good, then there really is there's no motivation in trying to wake those folks up. And it's nice to keep the door open though, and let them know that you're there for them and that you can talk in the future. But the subject that we've touched on before off camera as to what defines a liberal, we'll call it, I don't like putting people in a box, but the subject of what defines a liberal is very important at this time. And I find it fascinating because we both know people that have more than a 3-digit IQ, often have capital letters after their names. And you go to talk to them and it's like, this, you just can't, it's just, you're like on a completely different frequency, a completely different radio station. And I think part of what might be beneficial to talk about today is that phenomenon. And why is it that, friends and relatives and neighbors and workmates that we try to wake up, why there is that tangible resistance?
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. And right on cue, one of my most intuitive little cats has just joined me. So if my camera falls off, we know why. And also why it's important, James, because a lot of people sort of say, look, live and let live and don't inflict your views on others. But I think the difference is now, as you said, this is it. This is it. This is almost the fight to the death. And
Yes.
we're seeing, sort of changes in our lives in terms of restrictions, in terms of rights and liberties being taken away faster than even David Icke could have imagined. And the difference is that if we don't keep our freedom of choice available, then humanity has no choice. So if I put it as simple terms, in terms of, I'm going to call it on here because otherwise we'll be censored, the jab or the cure, this one. Now,
yes.
I completely agree in informed choice. But what I see happening is I don't see anyone having informed choice. I see them being forced into making decisions out of fear, which is what you were touching on earlier.
Yes.
But also, as soon as you legislate something as mandatory, you are, once you've taken away a person's right to actually control what goes in their body, then where else is there to go? You have lost all sovereignty and all control of your future.
Yes.
And put it into the power of who? This is what most people aren't questioning. And this lack of the questioning spirit is quite amazing to me. As a scientist, when I see how brainwashed most of my fellow scientists are, and not in a rude way, but to me, the whole point of science is always coming up with new hypotheses, challenging the boundaries and constantly asking why. And that ability to question doesn't seem to be allowed anymore in society, in politics, in science. It's comply, put your head down, don't kick up a fuss. And if you do, you'll be dealt with in not very pleasant ways.
Well, evil, like greed, they're close cousins, I suspect, has a beginning and a middle, but it has no end.
Mm.
So, Hitler killed the brown shirts in the end, didn't he? So it's the ultimate violation of our property rights. That is to say, the property, the right over our own vessel.
Mm.
And the question that we've touched on and might be beneficial to discuss is, what is the explanation for the phenomena that is the liberal?
Mm.
And it gives me no comfort to talk in these terms, but war has been declared, literally, we can talk about that another time, on humanity. So those that would go along with it, and it gives me no comfort to use this word, but they are collaborators in effect. And effect, I think, is all that matters at this late hour. In effect, these liberals that go along with it are collaborators in our well-being, our very ongoing, our freedoms and everything. So the question that I go to bed asking myself sometimes is, you know, where does it come from? It's not a matter of intelligence. We know that. And as we've touched on, I think that a good portion of it could be the square root of our existence here, and the title to our podcast, which is, you know, which is it, love or fear? I would submit that maybe these people are coming from a place of fear, because once you buy into the notion that our government is not our safety net, it requires that we look in the mirror and adopt responsibility and become responsible. And I think that that touches on perhaps the truth as to what many of us find the inexplicable phenomena that is I hate putting people in a box, I hate names, but you know what I mean, the liberal that would go along with, I mean, these masks are, I mean, it's like putting a chain link fence in your yard to keep mosquitoes out. The whole thing on every level is absolute insanity. And, you know, we have been subject to perhaps the most state-of-the-art litmus test in history.
Yeah.
They make moves. And oftentimes it's not two steps forward, one step back. Oftentimes it's been 2 steps forward and 2 steps back, but they soften our psyche to the notion. They plant the seed, right? They're like negotiating with our consciousness, or on a political level, they'll hit us with full-blown crazy commie. And in the wake of that, socialism seems moderate, right? So they've been negotiating with our consciousness. And as you know, this has not been the organic unfolding of a society. This has been, I hate to associate the word art with oppression, but this has been state-of-the-art mind control and oppression. It has not been an organic unfolding. They've been playing us like a piano for a long time, and we've all been, even the most awake among us, we've all been deceived, you know, as will become apparent, I believe, very soon.
I'm completely with you. And I think, you know, I'd like to know your views on, do you think that sort of modern human has become so far removed from nature that we've lost all touch, a lot of us, with our intuition, our innate survival instinct of what's right or wrong at all levels? So even when you look at how most people live now, we are so caught up with doing, there's very little time for feeling and connection. Whether even you only need to go out to dinner now and see a family of 4 and everyone's on their phones, and there's so little face-to-face contact. And if we can't connect with those in our own family, how can we even hope to connect with those outside our family and Mother Earth? You know, when people become that removed from knowing themselves and from being able to detect right or wrong, then you're so malleable, aren't you? And so easy to control.
Yes. The word that comes to me lately is subplant. There's been a conscious effort to subplant our connection with source, our being in the here and now with our reality, subplanting it with a screen, right? Subplanting our representative form of government, subplanting what holds our attention. You know, there's a lot of think tanks. DARPA and all of these groups, the Tavistock Institute, and, you know, these intelligence alphabets, and they're certainly not about our intelligence, are they? You know, we're not getting a whole bunch of intelligence, you know, about big questions like where's the, you know, proof that these vaccines are effective, or well, it's been 100 years since we entrusted this private group called the Federal Reserve to print money against our gold. You
Yeah.
know, since it's been 100 years, we were thinking maybe there should be an audit, or, you know, what happened to the trillions of dollars that go to our Pentagon, you know, stuff like that. It hasn't been about our intelligence. It's been about their intelligence and learning how to manipulate us.
And it's been so well thought out for so long. So, you know, when we look at our connection with ourselves, and as I say, going right back to how you and I met through the connection with the animals. Now, you know, I often say to people that humans are the only species on the planet that have lost the ability to feed themselves. Because when you look at how most of us modern humans, you know, go in and what we buy from the grocery store, most of it bears no resemblance to food. And then we're making that decision for our children, for our animals. And, you know, you've only got to look at the difference between someone that looks vibrant and very healthy and the choices they're making in their day-to-day life to most Brits and Americans at the moment. Because unfortunately, you know, our food, our water, our environment, the EMF, the air we're breathing, where we're actually living and everything is not conclusive to physical or emotional health. And when you're in that state, it's really, really hard to make good decisions.
Yes. And, you know, a lot of time, very subtle differences define our successes, right? Look at any kind of sports. Look at the margin between the winner and, you know, somebody that's in mid-pack or something, or you know, average. No. And, you know, our diet alone can attribute to it. And we're subject to so many toxins. And I've been told by a very intuitive woman that we've talked to for many years. She's a dowser, actually. She's very intuitive and always on the money. That which ails us always is attributed to some manner of toxin.
Yeah.
And she'll go back to the month and what it was. Well, you were exposed to a solvent 9 months ago, or cleaning supplies. And more often than not, you think back on it and, yep, that was it. But, you know, you can have some of the smartest minds in the world on the subject, and it's such a cocktail of poison. It's very difficult in combination with people's unique makeup. It's difficult to decipher just which toxin it was, or which combination of toxins, you know, it was. So that's part of why your work is so important.
I think, you know, that you've hit on a really important point there, because what I hope, you know, to, you know, moving on to sort of giving people hope and things, often it's never one thing, isn't it? Is it? I mean, there might be one thing, the straw that breaks the camel's back, but it's a build up of all the different things. So, you know, there's so many different pressures that people are under these days, in terms of the way they're living. And I think one of the main things is most of us also have very little time in silence to actually tune in and really think, what do we feel about this? There's been a deliberate ploy to keep people busy with useless social media, computer games. Even the music we know has been deliberately manipulated to have very dysfunctional frequencies being pumped into
Yes.
us.
Yes.
And all of these things, you know, the body, the human body, the animal's body, the, you know, Mother Earth herself, we're incredibly resilient, but actually it reaches
Yes.
a point where you can take no more. And I certainly feel we're at that tipping point. But on the positive side of things, I also feel there's some really simple things that all of us can do to tip us back into the right side of balance.
Yes. And, you know, we're in a state of flux. This is the time that has been talked about for generations. This is it. Call it what you will. The awakening, the shift, Disclosure. I mean, as a child, I knew that disclosure about many things was coming. And, it is just such a significant, transformative, amazing time that we're in right now. And I only wish that I had more awake friends that I could share it with.
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? I mean, there's that age-old saying that you become the person that you surround, the product of the 10 people that you surround yourself most with. And I'm very lucky because mine are cats, dogs, guinea pigs, horses, and humans are very much bottom of that list. And I may jest, but it really gets me through times like this, because just today, for example, I've spent a lot of time outside in nature today. It was too cold to go barefoot, but I had my barefoot shoes on. I've been out with the horses, with the dogs, and I've been planting some vegetables. But when you're with the animals, most animals, even our domesticated animals, so people who've got dogs or cats that live with them, for example, or horses, even those that have been bred in captivity, quite interbred, when you look at how they behave and how they interact with their environment within and with each other, they've all still got a lot of their natural instincts intact if we
Yeah.
let them use them.
Yes.
And I know you're very experienced with dogs, sort of, I'm very experienced with dogs, but they pick up on our energies so much, don't they, James, and teach us so much
Yes.
about where we really are at.
Yes, absolutely. And I think I think that the time that we're in right now, one of the things it's about is moving into what many have been calling the fourth dimension. And a lot of what that's about is trusting our innate, our intuition. And there's such an enormous body of information um, that is associated with that kind of body of knowledge. I mean, applied kinesiology, and it's just amazing. I mean, you
Yeah.
get next to it somebody that practices it, and it's so simple, and you just cannot believe that it has been hoarded from us. But the life-changing information that's been hoarded from us file is a very large file, isn't it?
It really is. But I think, now really is a time more than ever where people can lead by example and really start talking about more of these things. I mean, it's one of the reasons why you and I wanted to have a chat about this, because so many people at the moment on both sides of the fence have got an inkling that something's not right. How far they want to question that can depend on so many different things, their own individual circumstances, who they're surrounded by, what job they're in, what their state of health, what their financial health is, etc. But at a core, once you've got that little questioning that's taken part, to surround yourself, whether it be virtually like this or physically with people that are in your neighborhood, with people that can encourage that questioning without shutting you down. When you see a baby learn to walk, they get up, they fall, they get up, they fall. When you see animals learning how to live in our environment, it's all by trial and error. But we've been almost so suppressed and bashed down that unless you can quote every bit of scientific literature, etc., people are afraid to question things, is what I see. But even if you don't have the answer, we don't need to have the answer. If there's some bit of you that's questioning it, to take time to listen to yourself and really start to trust yourself more than some idiot that you're listening to on the television that certainly hasn't got your best interest in heart.
No. And a little Jimism that I thought about years ago is maybe there's three levels of our being. There's the lowest level being regarding ourselves as what we have.
Mm.
The next level up, which is very broad, is defining ourselves as what we think. And the higher level is regarding ourselves as who we really be. Now, unless we're spending a lot of quiet time, most of us, myself, don't reside nearly as much as we should in the higher level, but we think that we are what we think. And, I don't know if you've watched Peanuts in the UK, but I was joking with a friend the other day. I said, we arrive at these belief sets over decades, and damn it, it's mine. And, we come up and we come up, those of us that are awake, and say, Linus, it's about the blanket, they hold this belief set like their security blanket. And we're saying, it's about the blanket. I think it's mildewy and old, and it's got a lot of holes in it. And I don't think it's serving you any longer. But they're holding on, and the belief blanket is just filled with lies. And people don't like it. I tried to level with my dad at a nice restaurant in Napa a few years ago. I was just going to really drop all the old stuff and just really be with him. We were at a nice restaurant. I said, well, Dad, I decided what I want my epitaph to say. Should I go tomorrow? I want it to say, we've all been deceived beyond our current understanding. The days of our division need to be over. And boy, that pushed his button right in the middle. In half of a second, he raised his voice and banged the table and said, I haven't been deceived. Oh, and then, and the vibration at the table just went.
So why do you think that is, James? Why do you think it's so hard? Because this is the crux of the issue, isn't it? For people to accept that we've all been deceived, all of us. I've been deceived on so many different levels, and every day I sort of astound myself by thinking, oh my God, I can't believe I used to think that. So why do you think it's so difficult for most people to accept that they have been deceived?
Well, it's like Charlie Ward's been saying lately, it's much easier to deceive people than to convince them that they've been deceived. And, the little analogy I just gave, where we think that we are what we think.
Mm.
And it is going to become it is going to be a very good time. And this next chapter is going to come much easier to us if we have an open mind and accept that. Now, you are probably like me in that when you hear some new information that you didn't know about, if it resonates with you, you want to look into it and learn something new. But a lot of our friends are not that way, are they?
Yeah. And it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I was always that annoying child that was always asking why? And, every parent's got one, but I still used to maintain that. And I'm genuinely happy if, to learn new information all the time and be proved that you've been wrong, because how boring would it be if that was it? Imagine if we got to our age now, James, and that was it. That's all we were ever going to learn. What would we do for the rest of our lives? I think, life is about exploring in nature. If we were an animal trying to survive in nature, we would have to be so in tune with every one of our senses, and we'd have to listen to that gut feel about whether there was danger around the corner and whether we could eat that particular food or not. We'd be in tune with the weather and when the bad weather was coming to find shelter, etc. And this is what humans have grown up with, over evolutionary time. And we've all got it in us. We've all still got it in us. And I think what I see is so encouraging is when people do just open their mind, even a fraction, life gets so much better for them, because actually they realize that they've got so much choice over their life that they didn't necessarily realize they had before.
Yes, it's been about, as you know, it's been about unlearning.
Yeah.
So that we don't remember who we really are, and, I wanted to share, before I became politically awake, and, let me say something about the word politics. We have this charged, association with the word that's been well-deserved. But if we look up the word politics, Merriam-Webster dictionary, it has a couple of definitions. It says the relationship between people living in a society. And the second definition, it speaks to how decisions are made.
Mm.
Well, if we look at politics that way, it's not, we don't feel like taking a shower afterwards, do we?
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
But before I became political, we were on a spiritual journey. And I think your audience, I don't share this with many people, but I believe that your audience is appropriate to share it with. And we dealt with a couple of people that were channelers, namely with Saint Germain, who I find is the most prominent light worker of our time. And from what I understand, had more than a hand in Nasara.
Yeah.
Is much more than just a financial system, as you know.
Yeah.
And it was an amazing experience watching this person who was very obviously driving the bus with a certain persona and a certain decorum, and then nothing for 30, 40 seconds. And then it is very obvious that they're not driving the bus anymore. They're a passenger. And everything, and the manner of speaking and the decorum, everything is different. And the perfect economical, eloquent use of the language without any stammering or and through a couple of channelers, we listened to what Saint Germain had to say. And I was going to share it. I was going to share a few of them with your listeners.
Please do. Yeah.
Well, first of all, through the channeler, he would, when we did a personal session, he would address me in these lovely terms of endearment. Dear one, beloved, creative master. Now, we're not used to being referred to as creative master. My dad never said, hey, creative master, you think you could master taking out the garbage for your mother? You know,
yeah,
not used to that. And just speaking to just how loved we are and how the Council of Light is with us always. And spoke of what he referred to as the game of separation. Would talk about the game of separation, which speaks to perhaps the biggest lie of all, that all of us and our surroundings and our relationship with each other and nature and the animals is separate. And of all the lies, that could be the one that they got the most mileage out of. And I was thinking today on a walk that them imposing this notion of time, which you could make a very good argument that it's a lot of BS.
Yeah.
I mean, when travelers go to visit untouched remote Polynesian islands that haven't been touched by our indoctrination, they have no words for time.
Yeah.
There's no like, see you later. It's like now. So instead of a master, somebody that's in the fifth dimension that can experience the future and the past and everything simultaneously, it's another instrument of separation, isn't it? The time thing. And the other thing that would be shared with us through Saint Germain would share often, and he would say this quite often. And at the time, I didn't feel it with the relevance that I do now. He would say that you're entering a future that's like no past you've ever known. It resonates a lot right now, doesn't it?
It sure does. It really does. And it really feels like that as well. It's such a huge shift that's upon us that it's exciting. I find it personally very, very exciting. But one of the things you said there, I think, is just so important about the way he spoke to you, because we know that we are electrical beings living in an electrical universe.
Yes.
And, you know, whether you want to call it as energy or how you want to define it, you know, we are all vibrational beings. Everything is, the bees, the plants, the earth,
yes.
the stones, you know, my glass of water. And words have energy. And the way most of us have speak to each other now, but most importantly, the way we speak to ourselves,
Exactly.
huge impact on every aspect of our being and
Yes.
how we feel about life in general. Now, it's something that you and I have spoken about before, because it's something that's so powerful to be aware of when we're dealing with animals, because animals aren't listening to the actual words we're saying, they're listening to the energy behind the words and how
Yes.
it's delivered. And
Yes.
when I hear most people how they speak to their animals, it's absolutely shocking. I mean, one of my friends today has just bought herself a new horse, and I can't remember the exact word she used to describe it, but basically it's a right little shit. Well, look at the energy, and she means it in an endearing way, but there's no endearing energy behind that.
Mm.
And that is setting the stone for that relationship. And you know, what you give out, that's what you get back, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I'm sure we've all got relationships in our lives where we feel we've been unjustly labeled as being a certain way, but it can be very difficult to break that mold, and that will affect the interaction, the energetic interaction between you. You know, most of us know if we walk into a room, we can pick up if someone likes us or not. And
Yes.
that will affect how we respond to that person. And at the moment, unfortunately, on both sides of the argument, most of the language I see used is very, very fear-based.
Yes.
And I think that's something that really needs shifting.
And what you said is, so true. And so many millions of people are coming to understand it, that everything is. I think I wrote down I didn't want to forget the famous Nikola Tesla's famous quote. If you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And the powers that be know all of this stuff. We're spiritual, vibrational, electrical beings.
Mm.
The earth gives off a frequency. I believe it's 7 or 8 hertz. Actually, I've read that it's used to be more in the 7s and it's moving to the 8s.
Yeah.
And human beings reside in the 60s to 70s in terms of cycles per second. And I understand that more and more people are moving towards 70 hertz a second. So the whole thing is, everything is changing. And if we don't reside in fear, we get to enjoy the ride. I mean, tell me if you concur. Do you know a lot of people that seem to be in a state of flux right now?
It's interesting, isn't it? Absolutely, I really do. And yeah, masses of people that are in a state of flux. And I think it's really, you know, talking about the illusion of time over the last couple of weeks, massively. And sometimes I think something really, and I'm going to just label it for the sake of I can't be bothered to beat about the bush, bad's happening. So if we're talking about the jab, I know loads of people that were adamant, you know, absolutely just trust it all. Anyone not having it is completely selfish. And now I see a big shift. And what's caused that shift, whether it's physically what's gone into their body, whether it's enough people talking out about it, whether it's the fact that they've made one decision and now they're very close to having to make the second decision. But I see a huge shift over the last couple of weeks, and
Oh, good.
it is really encouraging to me. I feel it's very difficult. In the UK, we've just entered spring, and we don't get a lot of sunshine over here. And when we do, everyone's in a good mood. So we've had a lovely week of weather. The birds are out, the flowers are out. There's a real feeling of I would say, you know, hope and opportunity. We've had some slight lift downs in our lockdown, and we're just coming out from our self-imposed lockdown. And I 100% believe it is self-imposed. Unfortunately, most people don't. But I do see a state of flux. And I think one of the things you said, James, right at the start of our conversation is about making sure that we're all there to receive people when they do change minds and opinions without the judgment, because
keeping the door ajar.
Keeping the door ajar and rewarding those little steps. So, you know, I've got two Romanian rescue dogs that came to me very traumatized. I absolutely adore them. And every little step in confidence you reward. But sometimes the greatest reward isn't exciting hugs and kisses. Sometimes the best reward for those nervous animals is just peace, to be peaceful and reward their behavior with peace. And I think I've been thinking a lot about, you know, how I react to various conversations and various behaviors, but demonstrating the energy of peace can be so rewarding for people, to give them the confidence to start questioning things, I think, and dipping their toe in the water.
Quiet time. And the significance, you know, I still don't reside and pay attention to it as much as I should, but of just breathing.
Yes.
Just breathing. And, you know, spending some quiet time and, you know, remembering who we are, which are just these amazing, amazing, healing, powerful, energetic beings. And I believe that in our lifetime, we're going to, you know, be unlearned and learn so much that has been kept from us. You know, we learn from, when we read about Nasara, I've read in a half a dozen places, it says that there have been 6,000 patents kept from us under a guise of national security. What a joke that is. Just let that sink in. Think of 600 patents that they obviously found significant enough to hoard from us. And then try to get your head around 6,000. It's just an amazing time. It's just I don't have any doubt that I came here for this time. I don't have any doubt about that at all. This feels like, well, it's our time. You know, there's a time for everything. And this is our time. And may I suggest that we start to act like it.
I agree. It is interesting. It's like, you know, for so much of my life, I've always been the odd one out. And I don't feel like the odd one out anymore. I've never, you know, in all the years I've been here, I've never connected with so many like-minded people as I have this year. And what's been so lovely is everyone's got completely different skills and different ways of looking at it. And going back to the learning, it's fantastic. I mean, I am a very fiery character. I should have been Italian. I'm very hot-tempered. I am impulsive. I'm impatient. And I've shifted so much this year. I've shifted so much because I've looked at the ways, you know, again, having my rescue animals is a really good enforced training school for me, because they give me instant feedback when I get it wrong. You know, my long-standing husband puts, you know, he's so laid back, he's horizontal, so he doesn't really care if I get all passionate and emotional about something, but my animals do, and they'll give me real-time feedback. And I agree, you know, it is here. And I think people are really starting to realize, a lot of people, and we only need that sort of 10% of us. And I really think we're there nearly, to realize that we are the creators of our own destiny. You know, our thoughts, every thought, every word has an energy, has a vibration. And when we choose to focus that on what we do want rather than what we don't. Now, I do understand that people need to get it off their chest about things that are worrying them. And you do need that balance of awareness, because if you're not aware of all that's going on that could be there to pull you off track, you don't necessarily know where to put your attention. But once you've got that awareness, I don't think we need to stay in the negative. I think our energy could be put far more positively in terms of what we do want to create. And that's why I think things like your website and things are so powerful, because once you've actually got it down there, you've got that resource, and you can almost let that go from out of your headspace now, because it's there to refer to. You're not needing to constantly remember it. It's there as a resource for other people. And once you've got it down there, you're free to move on to the next stage of your creation.
And these are no longer fringy woo-woo notions.
Exactly.
This, quantum physicists, no BS, dry scientists that you may not even enjoy having for dinner, are finding that they can replicate this information in a controlled environment. In other words, our thoughts do have energy, positive or negative. We can search. As a matter of fact, I have a few examples on my website, eyesonlies.net. And it's no longer in the peripheral. That's where we're moving. And it's been said that the two most powerful words that we could ever say out loud is "I am."
Yeah.
And fill in the blank. I am unlucky. This kind of typical, it figures this would happen to me. I am loved. I am capable. I am smart, and it has been a deliberate, as we've found a way of saying 3 times already in our conversation, it's been a deliberate effort to disconnect us from who we really are. All of it. The game of separation, as Saint Germain referred to it. Time, it helps do that. I truly believe the word coincidence, was used to keep us from figuring out how it really works. And if we were really everything that we are, and, starting to reside in the 5th dimension, which isn't a place that I reside, we would know that it's not cause and effect. It's cause and effect. Absolutely. It's all backwards. It's all inverted. And I'm so excited about living in a time when we're just move past this. I would say to my wife, after, my activism was more of a kinetic thing and showing up at, city council and board of supervisors and speaking out. And I would just come home and tell my wife, I just hope that we live long enough to see an end to this chapter. And it is becoming increasingly apparent that we are,
Yeah.
One time, a friend of mine and I did a radio show for a while. And I made kind of a lofty assertion. I said that all of our problems, inadvertently, one way or another, owe lineage to this cabal's manipulations. And I know that's a big statement. We opened up the phone lines and I said, you call in. If somebody can contest that, I'm all ears. Well, nobody really could. The homelessness thing, most of what ails us, it is not normal, depending on where you are and how expensive it is not normal for us to have to generate thousands of dollars a month to keep a roof over our head and feed and clothe ourselves. That's not a normal state. That's not why we came here, and I'm just so looking forward to moving past it. And I'm looking forward to a few apologies from some folks I know too. I don't know if they'll come, but that's okay.
But I know the time is near. And, science has proved telepathy exists. Science has proved healing exists. Science has proved interspecies communication exists. And probably for me, the most important of all is science has categorically proved that just by observing something, we change the outcome.
That's correct. Yes.
And that to me is just such a take home for people. So this is where, for me personally, because I've given a lot of thought over the last of 6 months in terms of, you know, how much time do I spend sort of educating myself about what has been going on and the scale of manipulation, and how much do I spend in positive creation. But actually, just by observing some of these negative things that have been going on, we as each individual human have the ability to change the outcome. And quantum physics has proven that.
Yeah.
So I have reached a stage now where I can be about a lot of things, not about all things, but quite objective about it. So, you know, for me, this whole, you know, everyone's been living in fear. I just haven't felt it at all. I don't think at any stage in the last, I think the only time I felt fear over the last 6 months is when one of my cats went missing. You know, and that was pretty scary. But then a friend who was more objective to me tuned in, communicated with him, and told him to come home, and he did. Absolutely. Thanks, Carol. But you know, I do mean it. It's like, you know, it sounds silly and superfluous to people to say, but when you do get that light bulb moment that fear is a choice, everything shifts for you. How have you found that in your life?
Yes. You know, when my brand of activism was more kinetic and showing up and, you know, trying to getting 50 people in a room is no easy task. We actually did a community center. It was partly for my mom to teach dance, and it was partly as a place for people to connect. But, you know, the most prolific activists weren't ex-military guys with lots of muscles and 30 guns and everything. The average activist that would get off the couch was often a middle-aged or older woman of faith. Now, why is that? They had the most courage. Why is that? It's because they knew that no matter what happened, they were in God's arms and they were safe and loved. And they just wanted to stand for the highest person that they could while they were here, you know? And people feel, again, so disconnected. And, you know, they might ask you, well, what can we do? What can we do? Well, what can you do? If you're already awake, you can make every effort to commensurate with others that are, and franchise new people into the truth, and try to do it from a place that isn't coming from, you know, obviously an egoic kind of place. We'll get much more mileage out of it if we approach it from just a loving place, just trying to wake them up. I mean, I had an ex-business partner that was a very powerful soul and very gregarious and knew a lot of people. And I wanted to try to wake him up. And I shared, like, you know, 35 different things with him, from the truth about fluoride to geoengineering to that the Federal Reserve was the head of the snake. I mean, you name it. And I couldn't get him to buy one. And he's a very bright guy. I mean, he reads a financial statement like I read a menu. But I finally disassociated with him and gave up. It's like, if I'm not being effectual and it doesn't feel good, I mean, even a child, you know, they touch the hot stove, ow,
Yeah.
ow. A couple of 2 or 3 times, they don't touch the hot stove anymore. So to answer your question, yeah, it's, you know, and when we try 10 times to wake somebody else up, and we're 9 out of 10 times we're not successful, we're not doing it for the 9, we're doing it for the 1. And I've seen it happen. You get these people that get woken up and they start to go down the rabbit hole. And 20, 30 months later, they're these prolific, awake people, and they wake all of these other people up. And so it is. And it's another thing that we can do, as we spoke of a few minutes ago, is pray. When one person prays for a higher good, and embraces a positive thing, it's one thing.
Yeah.
When two or more do it for our higher good, residing in love, it's a whole other thing. It's exponentially much more powerful. So people say, what can I do? Well, I put little lines in the water, wherever I go. See if I can catch somebody. Yeah. And I got a big one. And once in a while I'll make a new friend, or you'll plant a seed, and either wake somebody else up or commensurate and with somebody else. So it's important that we stay engaged. And I think that I'll pontificate for a moment. This is just what I think. I think that a lot of our problem right now is that people are not engaged. They're not engaged with themselves. Mm. They're not engaged with their community. And I've often likened it to a cabin in the woods that you own. If you go a period of time without any ownership of that cabin, somebody really bad might move in. If you don't have an ownership with your vessel, and the dark ones know this, either through being terrorized, extreme fear, depression. There's millions of people that are bipolar. Drugs, self-loathing, and you vacate your vessel. You become disengaged with your vessel. Somebody, a very bad spirit might move into your vessel. And I think the dark ones know this. I think the cabal knows this. Again, fear, right? MK Ultra, a lot of what they do with, brainwashing us, it all comes back to this, the square root and the subject of our talk today, the whole thing, right? Make a choice. What's it going to be? Maybe the reason we're here is to make a choice. Love or fear. Love is this expansive, infinite place where you're driving your bus and you're at cause. And fear is this, you're a passenger. And it can be in a very overt, cruel way. Like, unfortunately, we're going to have to learn about like what happens to millions of our children. Yeah. That's another. But it can happen in a very subliminal way. The cabal employs Hegel's dialectic to great effect, over and over. Problem, reaction, solution. They create and or portray a problem. The reaction elicits a certain amount of fear, and it could be we go into a little bit of a fight or flight mode, and it makes us more receptive to the power of suggestion. We're passengers, we're not driving anymore now. And then invariably the solution requires more control, or in moving in the direction that they want us to move in. And I've come to regard it as an almost mathematical formula for control.
And it works exceptionally
and they do it over and over. And you would think humanity would finally, after so many generations, would say, hold on a minute. You ain't running that one by me again. but why mess with what works?
Exactly. But we're messing with it, and we're not going to stop messing with it. So personally, just to finish off, because this is such a lovely conversation, but my belief is it's all about taking personal responsibility for ourselves. You can't change the world until you've got control of yourself. So for you personally, what would be your top 2 or 3 tips that you would give people that really work for you to keep you in a state of love over fear?
Well, I can't say I can reside and live in that which I know is true. But there are certain memes that are timeless that we're going to learn are very apropos. The truth will indeed set us free.
Mm.
It is always the darkest before the dawn. Have faith. When we talk about these negative things, or when we see negative things come to us, I think it's very important that we have some mental discipline right now and identify when they're trying to indoctrinate us, put on the brakes and go, whoa. That's indoctrination. I don't own that. I don't want to get any on me. And so before it goes into our computer, start to be very conscious about the information. And if it's something dark, know that folks like you and I, we're not about residing in darkness. I'm sure we know that the law of attraction is true. What we think about can come about. When we're skiing or riding our mountain bike, or I love being in a sports car on a circuit, on a racetrack. You don't look at where you don't want to go.
Exactly.
You look at where you want to go. But that being said, right now we're in a time when we're trying to get people to understand that we are in a time of good versus evil. And if you have an illness, if you have a cancer, you have to acknowledge that there is a dis-ease in us and go about the business of healing ourselves. And we have a malignant cancer, and the cancer is, in my view, all seems to be coming from the same place. So try to show some discipline in terms of how we process this negative stuff, and make sure you don't own it. And try to wake others up as much as you can, coming from a place of love. And, I have work to do. I still care about, what other people think.
Yeah.
But I care about the truth and our freedoms a hell of a lot more. It ain't even close. So if I need to recluse a little bit and not be as social as I was last year, I'll make new friends, and we'll lead others. And so it is. It's just going to be an absolutely amazing time. And maybe next time we'll talk about the politics of what we're seeing. And just the only other thing I wanted to share is that it is so important that we feel the truth. And I've woke up a couple of nights with the same scenario. We don't have any kids, but would we be where we are if we were teaching our kids to feel the truth? Like I shared with you the day, I get a feeling of talking to your young boy or girl. Well, kiddo, well, sweetie, you have a new scoutmaster. You're going to be spending a lot of time with him, overnights and everything. Well, honey, you got a new gymnast coach. You're going to be spending a lot of trips away, a lot of time with this person. How does it feel? And the daughter might say, you know what? It doesn't feel good. He kind of gives me the creeps.
Yeah.
I don't like the way he looks at my friend and touches her. And like we said before, I don't believe that we would be in this place of deception if more of us were, because our innate is never wrong, is it?
It's never wrong. It's never wrong. And we've pushed that override button too many times. And now we need to remove that override button and trust. Even if we can't explain it, it doesn't matter at this stage. The first thing is feeling it and acknowledging it. But, you know, too many people, if they can't explain why they feel something, they push it to one side. And normally we learn the hard way when that happens.
And discount. And, you know, sometimes we can fake it a little bit.
Yeah.
Visualize you touching your loved one or your animal and fake it. What if I really was a divine healer? What if I envisioned a lovely violet light emitting, coming through my body and out my hands, and moving all through that beloved animal's body and its illness being exhaled out of it? What if I was that powerful? And, you know, as we begin to show some discipline and maybe even fake it a little bit sometimes, we can move into that. We can move into that place. If we keep doing what we've always done, you know, we keep getting what we've always got, and what we've been getting ain't that good.
It's just not good enough. And, you know, time to raise the bar, everyone. And don't be afraid to dream big. You know, we are at a crux of changing everything. And I would really encourage people also to find someone to talk to as well, because, you know, when you find someone who's open to discussing things and different ways of looking at things, it sort of helps you explore what you're feeling yourself more and start to trust yourself more as well. So whether that person is a virtual person online, you know, whether you've got someone in your immediate family or friend group, but find someone, because there always is someone there. And once you can sort of start getting it off your chest and realize you're not as mad as you thought you were, and there are other people that do think and feel like you do, then it can really build momentum quite quickly, I feel.
And there's room for everybody. Everyone will resonate with somebody differently. One of the most powerful activists was this woman that was so obviously shy. I mean, really shy. And when she spoke with her 3 minutes with the mic, she was shaking, and you could tell that she was outside her comfort zone. And it was so powerful. We all will resonate with others in a different way. Or maybe you'll plant the seed, and most of them is thinking you're full of it. But somebody else that they trust or love will reiterate much of the same thing. And then boom, because we will all, oftentimes it's something that hits our health, like the jet, or it's something that hits our finances, or our private property rights, or our ability to trap. You know, we all have our button, and that will wake us. So keep pushing those buttons and enjoy. Yeah, and enjoy. This is just going to be, I believe that by Christmas, we are going to be so grateful, which, by the way, is one of the most wonderful places we can ever be, that we're here to see what's coming. I mean, of all the times and all the places that we could have lived, and probably have in the past, the fact that we're going to be here now to see this transformative, significant, amazing time. What are the odds?
Exactly. Well, I've really, really enjoyed that today, James. I hope everyone else does. I mean, there's so many things we could talk about, so I'd love to do a follow on to this. And, you know, obviously I'll put the link to your website so that people can get hold of you if they want to below. And yeah, let's see next time we talk, who knows what will have happened. Things are moving so fast at the moment. So yeah, happy Easter, everyone. Happy
You're
creation.
such a lovely woman, Catherine. I'm so glad that you're out there. I'm so
Oh,
glad there's a Catherine Edwards out there in our world.
oh, thank you so much. Well, have a really wonderful weekend. Everyone get out there and enjoy nature as much as they can. And yeah, thank you so much for your time today, James. And I'm sure we'll be speaking again soon.
I look forward to it.
Take care.
Bye-bye.